So education can be great, and there is a place for students to learn classically and read the great books and to have dialogue and discussion. That's not what's happening on university campuses. Instead, you get a steady diet of Robin DiAngelo and Ibram X. Kendi.
And what he's saying is true, and honestly, I don't even think there's a problem with teaching these topics.
How do we start to take academia back? What is the best route to achieve that?
Well, I'm not convinced it's possible in certain areas. I think we have to build new colleges and new institutions. My big fear is that this woke ideology is now infiltrating the social sciences. It's also infiltrating engineering and mathematics, the things that you thought would be immune to the kind of racial preference.
I would love to learn more about that because I graduated with a degree in electrical engineering, optical and electrical engineering, the study of photons and electrons. So when I was in school, and maybe it wasn't my school, I never heard of any like woke ideology. It was a very technical field, but I can definitely see how other fields, can be infiltrated by wokeness. Because let's say you are in sociology and you do have to learn about current events, depending on the perspective of that teacher, which, let's be honest, if you're a sociology teacher at majority of accredited universities in the United States, you probably are left-leaning. I don't see how you cannot teach history from your bias. And I can definitely see that happening all throughout the country. So I'm a little curious about, his thoughts on this.
Worldview is now totally and completely infiltrated. And so I wrote a whole book called The College Scam. So I'm not exactly big on saving higher education, but I do think there is a place for higher education. And it pains me because I go and I visit to Hillsdale College quite often. Hillsdale College is America's greatest college, by the way. They do a fabulous job. And it pains me because I see how good education could be. I sit down in these classes at Hillsdale College, and they're studying Aristotle's Ethics. They're studying, Augustine. They're studying the Summa Theologica by Aquinas. Now, I would just venture a guess that many of you have probably not spent more than maybe a week or a month or a semester thinking about Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle and what they had to offer. If you guys are, then I'll stand corrected on that.
And you know what's insane? A lot of what he's saying is really not being taught at majority of universities. The only way I can see someone learning about Aristotle and Socrates is if, let's say, you get a PhD and your area of research involves them. But for the majority of undergraduate students, I don't see how that's happening. And the reason why is because in a lot of undergraduate classes that are liberal arts, for example, your grade, since it is more of a subjective field, it's really determined by whether the professor likes what you're saying or they don't like what you're saying. And I've been in those classes before. I've been in class before where I've written a paper and I got a 70% on the paper. Don't know why. Mind you, I'm a whole engineer. So everything I do is more so technical and very direct. But when I'm in these classes sometimes, I'm like, I don't even know why I got a 70%. All I'm saying is you really never know when you're in these classes. It's really to the teacher's discretion on what you're doing, if it's good enough or if it's bad. And this happens a lot.
We're talking about why Western civilization is the greatest and most excellent experiment in self-government in human history. Why is that the case, right? And so education can be great. And there is a place for students to learn classically and read the great books and to have dialogue and discussion. That's not what's happening on university campuses. Instead, you get a steady diet of Robin DiAngelo and Ibram X. Kendi and of Gene Stefanik and of Intro to Critical Race Theory and Herbert Marcuse and Michel Foucault.
And what he's saying is true. And honestly, I don't even think there's a problem with teaching these topics. However, I think there's a problem when you only teach these topics. If you're going to teach about critical race theory or left-leaning ideologies, that's fine because at the end of the day, you're in a college. However, at least teach the other side as well to the same extent that you teach the left. Teach right ideals, teach conservative ideals, teach other sides because you want your students to be well-rounded. You shouldn't want to create biased or woke students necessarily. You want students who know both sides of the story and then let the student themselves draw their conclusion whether they want to be left-leaning, right-leaning, woke or not. Let the student decide because you as a professor, you're supposed to teach everything. You're not supposed to only teach one side. That's not right at all.
and Jacques Derrida and postmodernism and post-structuralism, that really these ideas could be entertained for a short while. It's a really bad idea to build a worldview around them. In fact, it's a great way to burn everything around you if you actually do that. So how do we reclaim it? I think it's time to support the good institutions and build new ones.
That would be crazy, building all new institutions. But let me know what you guys think about this video. I love Jojo, and I'll see you next video.